Greetings. Today's show focuses on two primary areas. The first is what's going on with Tesla's revenue from sales and therefore earnings as we head into the finish out of the quarter. And secondly, what's going on with the Silicon Valley Electric Summit. SVES.stanford.edu is where you can view the conference that occurred this Friday, as well as older conferences that include several Tesla executives that I think you guys might find useful and interesting. I'm going to move around a little bit here to get our light better. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Also want to thank our Patreon supporters. We definitely appreciate your support. It makes a huge difference in what we're doing and currently and heading forward. Would also like to get your input on a question, which is we're considering something like EV Insight or a name change of that ilk, because we do cover a broad range of issues affecting EVs, and we therefore would like to find a name that is more broadly appropriate, is one of the recommendations that was made to us, and wanted to get your input on that in terms of names that we might want to consider as we consider a shift in what we're doing. As you can see today, we're at a place called the National Harbor. It's kind of quiet here, but we have all kinds of interesting actions. So right behind us, you can see that there's a Ferris wheel that's actually spinning. And it's just one of the most beautiful places, I think, in the country to take in all kinds of sights. And it's rare, as you'll see at the end of the show when we look around, it's rare to have Air Force One in your show, because it's also the decommissioned version is domiciled here, and you can visit that as part of a trip that you might do. We want to jump into, first of all, as you all know, Tesla is about to announce earnings, or first, the quarter will close, and then we're going to hear earnings numbers as well as what production numbers look like. I think that Elon has previewed all of this to say that the production numbers are going to be solid, but there are a couple of questions lurking. Number one is, Tesla shifted its build process from simply building to orders to sort of building large numbers of the most commonly ordered vehicles. So as a result, we now have a situation where there's inventory that's growing, and the question mark is, after those record production activities have gone on, how is the company doing in terms of matching production with orders, which generates revenue and profit? The second question that everyone's asking, and so our general assessment is, yes, Tesla's produced a lot of cars. Yes, Tesla has produced a lot of Model 3s, and therefore has been able to exceed previous numbers that were out there. The next question is, while that production is up, what's going on with demand? The thing is with demand right now is that our assessment is, particularly because Tesla has brought in things like the right-hand drive vehicles for England and other places like Japan that are right-hand drive places, we're actually expecting for those numbers to actually be very solid. So because of where they're headed with new products and the length of time at which people have been waiting for it, I think the quarterly numbers are going to actually be very solid. So usually when earnings occur, there's sort of two phases. The first phase is what were the raw numbers, and the second phase is what's the guidance in terms of what the revenue and earnings numbers are going to be going forward. And this is, so I think that stock stays in the range of where it's at. And then the next question mark is, what does the future look like? Tesla used to announce the number of vehicles that have been sold, or the number of people on the waiting list for those vehicles. And they've sort of ceased doing that. And it sort of introduced a question mark, which was, has Tesla's situations slowed down significantly, therefore affecting what our numbers might look like. And so I bring this up because this is sort of the second fly in the ointment, is, if you will, is what's going on with demand, revenue, sales, etc. And our assessment of this is that the numbers are going to be good on the revenue side. I think that the statements made on future revenue and earnings is really going to make a huge difference. Now, I have to admit that we're going to roll out of this spot because we managed to snag a little bit of noise that's going on here. And I'm a boat person, as we've discussed. One of the elements that I'll introduce here is there's something called the water taxi in the greater Washington, D.C. area. And as you can see, it's a really nice enclosed traveling facility that allows you to sort of roam around the waterways of Washington, D.C. for only $10. And it's an amazing tour. And I wanted to just note it to you guys as you can see. So I think we're in a better noise range here. Yeah. Okay. The second thing, so finishing up on our earnings analysis and where we are and where we're headed, the analysis that we want to put forward is just to suggest that we think that the numbers are going to be good on the revenue side in terms of how many vehicles have been ordered and sold. The big question mark is, what does it look like going forward in terms of earnings and revenues in subsequent quarters? And the answer is that at this point, Tesla's really not giving any guidance. Our assessment of it is that as we start moving sub $50,000 for the shipment of cars, we're going to see a very nice increase in revenue and hopefully profit for the company. So our assessment is that I would say guarded optimism. The drivers for this are, number one, the price point of Tesla's vehicles and the value proposition of charging and other aspects of the company, I think makes it awesome. Number two, there's some unique things happening with Tesla right now. One example being in California, because of a bunch of reasons, gas prices have pushed towards $5 a gallon. So one of the things that's been going on with EVs of all types, including Teslas, is the higher the gas price is, the more people start to think about EVs. And in California, you have all kinds of other advantages. For example, you can use a carpool lane if you're all electric, to encourage people to buy electric vehicles and be by yourself. You also have the better gas prices. Another sort of hidden gem for Tesla in the California marketplace is the fact that right now the electric company in fire-prone areas of Northern California has now begun shutting down power for a few days. So I think there's going to be a lot of power walls and Solar City power on the roofs that's going to be put in. But I also am expecting a very strong push towards people doing things like using their cars to power their homes, possibly as a way to sort of get through these outages for a few days. And it wouldn't be a shocker to see certain people driving their Tesla to the supercharger station, charging up, heading back home and powering the house off of the electricity in the car. I think it's a real possibility. So all the issues here, which is primarily a California-based issue, I think are going to be kind of interesting to watch how Tesla responds to customer demand relative to electric. And by the way, there is a problem, as you all could figure out, that for those Tesla owners who are in areas that are affected by the blackouts, clearly you have to figure out supercharger backup plans or how many miles you travel a day so you can cycle in a supercharger stop. This also calls into question how wise it might be to go for the lowest range vehicles, because if you're going forward, California is going to continue to do these blackouts as a way to prevent forest fires. you may need that extra range as a way to do your daily drive, as well as be able to make it to the supercharger to recharge and not be affected by these outages. So an interesting, new development or issue that's popped up. The second, so bottom line is that we think the earnings numbers are going to be solid for Tesla. Everything really hangs on the guidance. I'm sort of, now that Elon has decided to get rid of his Twitter account, I'm cautiously optimistic that we could actually see there being a really nice shift in terms of core operating philosophy that the company might have. The second thing we wanted to review today is something called the Silicon Valley Electric Summit. So what's going on is that Stanford is sort of the center, one of the centers of engineering relative to the shift to electric. One of the big items that's coming up is, annually there's this conference. Everything's free, including lunch, etc. Good afternoon, sir. Good. Mm-hmm. So everything's free at the conference, the meal, lunch, etc. It's always held at this time of year, right after the students leave campus. One of the noteworthy elements I picked up from last year's summit was the fact that this interdepartmental process of increasing the number of PhDs that are working in the electric space has yielded about 600 PhDs at Stanford and other places over the last X number of years. And so there's a real emphasis on electric, etc. I wanted you to go to SVES, which stands for Silicon Valley Electric Summit.stanford.edu, and you could actually watch the keynote speakers, etc. I also want to reference you backwards by 2 years on that same site because J.B. Stroebel, the Chief Technology Officer of Tesla, actually was the keynote speaker then, and I think it might be useful to sort of hear comments that he's made at the summit because he's one of the drivers of sort of the setup and implementation of this group, and I think it might enhance your overall viewing and command and understanding of what's going on right now. The other thing that's sort of burning that we're fascinated by how it plays out is that right now there's a discussion going on as to when Tesla is going to be unseated by major manufacturers, be it GM, Daimler, VW, etc., over time. And the question mark that sort of emerges is, how might this occur, when, how, etc., etc. And, the early stage of this suggests that they still have a lot of work to do to catch up and then surpass Tesla. The big question that's really burning right now is if you have, let's say, 10 car companies that all have lined up 8 to 10 product lines that they're going to be putting out in the marketplace, what I'm wondering about, and this includes Rivian, by the way, which a lot of people have articulated is going to be a big problem for Tesla going forward. What I'm fascinated by is the reason Tesla built the Gigafactory was a shortage of batteries that weren't being used for laptops and phones to build out. Yes, there are several entities that are preparing and manufacturing batteries, but the question mark that pops up is that, number one, when will the batteries be ready to go? Number two, will they get caught in what I call the in-between problem? So right now, lithium ion is sort of the ruler of the roost, but the question that pops up is what happens as we move, to superconducting, graphene. There's discussions about the difference Maxwell is going to make. So there's a huge issue, which is you could have a lot of entities that are built to manufacture, for example, the folks in Korea, in particular LG, is doing a 400 pouch product to deliver in the EV space right now. And so there are advantages to the pouch versus what Tesla is doing, but Tesla has sort of evaluated all of these and has chosen, the small battery, technique that we've discussed. and they haven't been followed up in a similar fashion by competing entities for a bunch of reasons. I think, the biggest one I believe is that it's a cheaper, without the metal, you have a cheaper battery, plus you save on weight. But on the flip side of that, there are all kind of benefits you get in terms of, the list is long, but in essence, the ultimate is to be able to control all manner of how the battery works, how it cools itself, etc., via this technique. And I'm intrigued because I wouldn't be surprised. There are some new competitors of Tesla's that are former Tesla executives, and they've chosen to standardize on the Tesla style battery as well. And so it'll be interesting to see when the major names in Korea and other battery manufacturing locations capitulate and decide to go ahead and follow Tesla into the structure of the 2170 battery. So the bottom line is that many competitors are lurking relative to coming into the marketplace and putting a dent in Tesla's plans. But right now, number one, they have to standardize on battery. Two, they have to get those batteries at scale to be able to provide them to customers. Three, we're in a kind of the number of cars on the road from the different manufacturers is really in a beta test mode. And number four, because of the lack of supercharging facilities attached to competing entities, I just think that Tesla still has a 1 or 2 year space to establish good customer fundamentals that allow them to sort of weather the storm going forward and be a very successful operating entity. So the one other thing that's sort of burning right now that I think is fascinating to watch is there's a big discussion about what's happening with demand for Tesla. As you guys might recall, what Elon Musk indicated is the truck, the electric semi-truck from Tesla is in an unlimited demand zone from trucking entities. As Tesla is able to stabilize both the amount of batteries produced and the number of Model 3s that are on the road, I'm fascinated by the fact that I'm kind of confused about the lack of demand discussion that's been going on, because once the batteries that are not being used in the Model 3 are allowed to be purposed to the trucks in an unlimited demand zone, I just think that we end up with a huge Tesla advantage in terms of how this all plays out. So I'm very much looking forward to sort of seeing how truck and the Roadster are brought into activities here of production, and I believe it's a pretty exciting situation. Any rate, I wanted to note to you that our part of our strategy is that whenever we do our show, we try to sort of not do heavy fill-in. Number one, I want to say hello to Sean, Vladimir, etc., for taking time out to visit with us live this morning, and love to have any and all of your questions, because it definitely affects what we cover for the show and discuss and follow up on research-wise, etc. I also like traveling a bit, but we've had some major issues in terms of sound quality and other challenges. As you can see, the light on one side of my face is a little bit darker, so there can be issues with being out, but it is nice to sort of do some travel, etc. True. Josh made a comment with the criticism of shifting from lack of demand to at-scale profitability. I would agree that this is definitely what the discussion is about right now, and Elon has already admitted that even though the volume of sales is going to be up, it will not be a profitable quarter. So we already know that. The question is, how bad is that number, and does it necessitate later on increasing cash or some other radical surgery to address that issue. I would say that Tesla has some options in how to make the numbers work better, and I really feel like the silence that we're getting from Elon suggests that he might be turning a new leaf, and that I think it improves the prospects of Tesla dramatically going forward. So the bottom line answer is we shall see, but I think there's a lot to be optimistic about because there's still a lot of customer demand. The products are selling well. They're well loved. I'm really hoping that we can get some really solid management in place. Yeah, true. Interesting. The comments that are being made regarding this are the fact that Tesla does not have a demand issue. They have a, okay. Thanks for the comment, Jerry. Very strange. I will have to check out what's going on with that. So, at any rate, there's a bunch of comments that are flying by. Hopefully you guys are able to see them. I try to usually read them. That way those that don't have the comments coming on their screen can pick them up. So that's been sort of part of my end of show process. So at any rate, Jerry, thanks for the visit as well. And Gareth, interesting. Packing densities, maybe two different size of batteries might be appropriate for that. I believe that makes sense. So no argument at all with that suggestion. Thanks for sharing that. We also wanted to encourage you to share challenges you may be having with your vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. There's one last data point I wanted to bring up. We had a chance to interview dry electric improves density. Indeed, a dry electrode improves density. Thanks for that comment, Josh. We had an interview with a longtime Tesla owner, and one of the things he brought up that I thought was interesting that wasn't mentioned in our previous show is the fact that he put solar panels on the roof and he has the power going to his car. What he pointed out was in a place called Montgomery County, there is this interesting phenomenon going on where they don't charge more at night versus daytime for electric, so the value of the power wall is limited, hence he doesn't have one. So I thought that was an interesting point because it looks like the rules in different places are making the whole solution relative to solar panels and the power wall not be the case. I wanted to bring this up in case there's input that you might have about your area that you might want to share, so others purchasing may, have a better idea how to manage the structure of their solution. At any rate, just wanted to remind you, as usual, 20 leg lifts per leg with a 5-pound weight. It's a great idea. Don't go to bed within 4 hours of eating, best case, or minimum 2 hours. Number 3 is fried foods no more than once a week as another health tip. And then I've been learning about something called compression socks. So we met with an NIH researcher whose daughter is a cardiothoracic surgeon. And when she's on her feet for like 12 hours in an operation, she'll wear compression socks to ensure that the blood flow in the legs, doesn't generate a clot. So another thought, interesting. There's a discussion about the Model Y, which obviously isn't here yet, but obviously it's going to be a very, very heavily demanded product for a whole bunch of reasons. So I see a lot of people that had Model X's or even S's moving down to the Model 3, especially if the kids are now out of the house and it's not a routine issue, to deal with those challenges. At any rate, I want to thank all of you again for joining us. I'm going to take you guys out with more of a view, how to here. Got my Tesla hat, recommend you do the same on Amazon. We're going to take you out with kind of a view. This is sort of looking at the Wilson Bridge, and then we're cycling back slowly to the Ferris wheel. And it's a really nice boating area. And in the distance, you can actually see the Air Force One, which is the decommissioned version of it, and some of the hotels that are part of this complex. At any rate, thanks once again for joining us. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Look forward to all comments and suggestions. Have a great day. Bye for now. Tschüss, macht's gut, au revoir, lehitraot, choda hafez. And in Jamaica,